And from Chicago, Windy City Underground Sports proudly presents the show where everything sports, everything Chicago. KJ Sports Talk.
And welcome to the Sports Talk. So today we're gonna be talking about a little bit of everything. Mostly today we're gonna mostly cover the tournament, the NCAA tournament. We're gonna talk about a lot about the men's. We're gonna talk a little bit about the women's because they still have some games coming up with, the where we're gonna get into that later with the Elite Eight. But first thing first, we're gonna start with the Stephen A. versus LeBron debacle. A lot of comments. I'm gonna give my input over it. So before we do that, we're gonna watch the video of what I feel like was led to it. So
really trying to be as respectful as I possibly can be towards LeBron James. I am pleading with LeBron James as a father. Stop this. Stop this. We all know that Bronny James is in the NBA because of his dad. The first game of the season, opening night, the Griffeys in attendance, father-son duo playing in an NBA game for first time, an absolutely positively wonderful story. And then reality sets in. We love what we're seeing from him in the G League because that's where you belong. As you hone your skills and you get better and you legitimately earn, which I believe he has the potential to do. I am rooting for Bronny James. It would be cruel to root against him. It's a wonderful kid. I wish him nothing but the best. But he's LeBron James' son. And everybody knows what attention that brings. Molly, Doggy, put them up on the screen because I want to see their face when I say this. Right now, Bronny James is averaging 0.3 points, 0.3 assists, and 0.4 rebounds. You know what people are saying. You know what they're going to do to this kid. You know what these numbers mean. You know what it's going to do to your son, to people who are missing out on opportunities, that are busting their tail on other NBA teams in the G League, in Europe, and everywhere else, what kind of opportunity they're starving for. You're exposing your son like this? I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any way. I'm simply saying to have that moment on game one of the NBA season is one thing. To propel it to a point where he's on the bench, he's in uniform, he's taking up a roster spot, and now you're giving him time in the first quarter, and you see the absence of production. How are you helping him? I just don't get it. I really don't see, I really don't get it. I really don't.
yeah, so as y'all heard, that video is currently is responsible for the LeBron and Stephen A getting into it. LeBron seen Stephen A that game and he approached him. Stephen A didn't like it. They've been going back and forth. LeBron went on Pat McAfee show and explained it. Stephen A had something to say about that as well. Me personally, I'm not in the fence of neither. But I am gonna say that I kind of understand it. I mean, I don't think LeBron should have went at him for that, but at the same time, Stephen A wasn't completely wrong, but at the same time, he wasn't right. He wasn't wrong in giving his opinion about Bronny. He's an analyst. It's something that I would love to do in the future, but and his job is to criticize players. To tell it like how he is, to obviously give his opinion on their performance. Analyze how they perform. Whether they're great or not, which is cool. My issue that I have a take with him, and that with anybody is who is he addressing it to? He's addressing it to LeBron James. He's a player. You know, he has, as much as we would like to say that LeBron has pull, I mean, and some people, we are guilty of it, including especially me. I'm guilty of saying, "Oh, LeBron runs the show, LeBron does this," but the reality of the situation is LeBron does not run it. Um, Fun fact, the people who actually that Stephen A should have addressed, and I probably would have completely been on Stephen A's side, is Jeannie Buss, who's the governor. He should have addressed her. Rob Pelinka, who's the general manager and vice president of the operations of the Lakers, and JJ Redick, who's the head coach. If you watch that, you didn't really see them. It was a plea to LeBron, like, why is you letting your son go through this? Why is doing this and that and third? Reality of the situation is LeBron is like I said, LeBron is not the head honchos there. He's the viable player there. That's not his call at the end of the day. He can want it as much as he want. I'm pretty sure he wants his son to play, but that's not his call. That's a JJ Redick call. That's a Rob Pelinka call. That's a Jeannie Buss, situation. That's their job. That's kind of their area. Like Jeannie Buss, obviously, she knows what she wants the team to win. She knows what she wants. Rob Pelinka, his job to go get the players to win. He has the final say so on what players comes in, what players doesn't. Uh, JJ Redick, his job is to coach the players that he gets. Obviously, he has some input of that. Who's who he wants on his team, and his job is to he control the minutes. At the end of the day, he has to be the one. He's the one saying, "Hey, you go in, you check out." He's the one managing that. So, with that being said, so there should is there, I'm blaming them for that. Bronny came from so much, and so it's like for that. I mean, even then, it's like Stephen A. You're like I agree with you as an analyst. Like I said, I don't know if Bronny's necessarily ready, but to take shots at LeBron for what? At some point we have to stop taking shots at this man. We can't blame him for everything. It's his son's not performing in the league. Oh, it's Brun's fault. LeBron, I'm pleading you plead to this man as a father for what? Because his son didn't perform well in the game that he has no control over. At the end of the day, right, Bronny has a bad game. He is an NBA athlete, but I could, nepotism exists in the league. There's no doubt in my mind that him being LeBron James Jr. has affected his draft status. There's no doubt in my mind that he's probably any other kid that he might not have made it to the league. But at the same time, you can't just blame his parent. You can't blame his father for his mishaps. Sort of say. He's still one of the better players in the league. I mean, not in the league, but in the world. Like, it's not too many people on this planet that could beat this guy 1-on-1. Seriously, I've been watching Bronny for a long time. I'm not the biggest LeBron fan, but he used to be my favorite player prior to Joakim Noah came to the league. Probably closer to, I've always gone back and forth he used to go back and forth with friends, when they're doing it in high school, because I was a big D Rose fan. D Rose is my guy. But at the same time, but it's like I believe in right is right, wrong is wrong. So it's like I understand, like Stephen A. You analyze the son, but my issue is you addressing it to him. Why is it his fault? What did he do? What is he doing? It makes it sound like, oh, like you're making it seem like, yeah, he's telling the coaches, yeah, play my son. Go get him. He's all he said was that he wanted to play with him. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with LeBron actions on that? Usually I'll be the first one to tell you when LeBron is wrong. And he is wrong for, addressing Stephen A. the way he did it, because about, he, about his son, I mean, like, I wouldn't have gave it a mind, but it's like, I feel like he should address Stephen A. over, why are you coming to me about this? Why are you not, why is you not, spilling your hate towards Rob Pelinka? Why is JJ Redick not get thrown on the bus? I'm okay with that, but it's like any chance we get, to throw LeBron under the bus, they will. And it's not fair for him. It's not fair to sit there and just, throw a man on the bus, for something that he didn't do. It's not his fault that he don't control whether or not Bronny gets 30 minutes a game or he gets 0 minutes. LeBron is still a player. He's not the coach. He's not the general manager. His job is a player. He get paid to play the game. He's an on-court coach, obviously, but at the end of the day, he's not the coach. He doesn't have the say-so. When you look at the job title, it's JJ Redick. JJ Redick is the coach. JJ Redick is responsible for how his team plays. If the Lakers doesn't win, you're not gonna fire LeBron as the coach. It's gonna come back on JJ Redick. He is responsible for all five guys on that court at once. He's responsible for that whole roster. So when that roster mess up, is at the end of the day, it's JJ's fault. If we're gonna blame one particular person other than Bronny, it'll be JJ. It'll be Rob Pelinka because he could have not drafted him. He chose to draft Bronny. Why he drafted him? No one would truly knows. Most of us we're gonna say it's nepotism. I mean, no one until Rob Pelinka says that, then it's not. But at the same time, it's like I said, that's him. But at the end of the day, like I said, Stephen A was completely in the wrong because you calling out LeBron over a situation that has nothing to do with him. It's like what do you want him to do? Like you want him to just go get points for Bronny? You want him to just give the ball to Bronny a million times? You want to tell him to send his son to the G League? Obviously, what father would does that? I mean, as a person, who wants kids one day, I understand, what Bron's going through. I would, if I was in his situation, I would react the same way. I would want to play with my son as well, especially if I have sort of that power. I would say, hey, any teams that draft my son, hey, that's the team I'm going to play with. Well, guess what? At all 32 teams, they have the options whether or not they wanted to draft them. And the Lakers, they wanted to keep LeBron, so they drafted Bronny. I mean, it's not like LeBron held them hostage. He didn't do anything illegal, So like, why is he catching flack for this? It's like, and I'm sick of it, And like I said, I'm sick of the LeBron hate for certain situations like this. Like, we hate this man so much, and I really think that that's So I don't understand it. Like, I wouldn't like. I'm not gonna be the person like that. I'm not gonna be the person that says that he's the GOAT because he's not. And I have video proof of me saying that he's not. I believe Michael Jordan's the GOAT, but you know, but I'm only saying that to say that for me to sit up here and tell y'all that LeBron is he's getting hate for something that he has not control over is ridiculous. Like I said, I'm not stating like again as I constantly say, I'm not stating that he's right for approaching Stephen A. Smith. I understand it completely though. And I'm just saying in my opinion, and why I'm not in agreement with Stephen A. on this one, and Stephen A. is somebody that I look up to. He's one of the reasons why this show exists, when I came, when I want, I'm currently a sports broadcaster, and one of the reasons why, I'm currently studying sports in school at the very school that I'm at right now, Illinois Media School. And one of the reasons why I'm doing it because of Stephen A. He's one of the most, he's a sports analyst. Somebody that I've been watching for a while. He's the biggest sports analyst right now to date. There's no one bigger than him. No name is more synonymous with sports analysis right now as we speak than Stephen A. Even Shannon Sharp with his, Shannon Sharp is good, but he's not Stephen A. He's Stephen A. is the guy right now. Is Stephen A. could say he quit ESPN and when he want to go back over to Fox and guarantee and goes there and gets the job instantly because he's that guy. He's him essentially. For him to say this is just, but and it's like for him to just go out there and just bash another man for his son even when another man has nothing to do with it, is just preposterous, and it's insane. And it shows and I wonder what was his real intentions of it, I get it, like I said, I get it how we all think LeBron has power, but let's be real. Doesn't in his job description, player minutes is not there. That's the head coaching job description. Drafting players is not in his job description. That's more so the general manager description. He doesn't orchestrate the team. We often say, yeah, he gets coaches fired and all that. I do believe that he has his opinions. He obviously knows who he wants as his coach and who he doesn't. Obviously he's going to have a say. He might have a say so in the locker room because hey, he's your guy. He's the face of the league. He's your, any team he's on, he's the franchise player. And if you're on a team, obviously, and if you're part of a basketball team, obviously, you know that it revolves around your franchise player. You want to keep them as happy as long as possible, which is cool. So, so I understand, and like, why people would think that he has power, but the reality is he doesn't, and it's not fair to him. And he gets a lot of fair criticism and a lot of unfair criticism, you know and this is one that I believe that's completely unfair, and I glad I have an opportunity to speak about it, and I'm gonna speak on it as this. Like I said, he didn't do it. Like, he didn't tell them to draft Bronny. He didn't tell them how many minutes to play Bronny. So why is his name coming up when Bronny comes up? It's so that's my biggest issue with that, and I believe Stephen A was wrong for staying in that. Like, why is he addressing Bron? Y'all just seen what I seen. You know, if somebody did something wrong, why wouldn't I address that person? Why it's like that's not right. I don't understand that part. But to some better news, let's do a KJ fun fact. Fun fact: the term March Madness was coined by Henry V. Porter. Henry V. Porter coached. He's a former coach for Illinois, for a high school in Illinois. He was also like on the board when he came up with the term. Like, he came up with the term March. Well, he coined it at first. He published it first in like March of 1939 at a high school, in an Illinois high school athlete journal. And then in 1982, a broadcaster, Brent Musburger, used it, in a CBS broadcaster used it in the 1982 tournament. That's when it first got introduced to college. Crazy, ironically enough, the team that won the tournament in 1982 is North Carolina. Also, and anybody knows North Carolina knows the synonymous for Michael Jordan, who was actually on a roster in 1982. So it's crazy, how the sports world, how everything's connected. The fact that March Madness is, it's an Illinois thing. It's home. It came from Illinois. Just another reason why I love my city. Another reason why I think Illinois is the mecca of basketball. Um, well, I love my state. Another reason why I love my state. March Madness came from there. Also, March Madness came, then for when it got used in, when it came to college, it came during the time where, the greatest basketball player of all time, in my opinion, he was getting ready to win, and he's also synonymous with Chicago basketball, Mr. Michael Air Jeffrey Jordan himself. So the term came to college basketball during his run, during him and North Carolina run to the tournament, in which they played against Georgetown and the Patrick Ewing. It's great. Another fun fact: the last Final Four that feature all number one teams, all number one seeds in the men's division, would be 2008, in which it had North Carolina, Kansas, Memphis, and UCLA. And when Memphis, had my guy, Mr. Derrick Rose, was on there. So it's great to see him in history. And I only say that to say that the current that this is the second Final Four right now that's going on in the men's, that will feature all number one seed: Houston, Duke, Houston, Duke, Auburn, and Florida will all go to war. They're all going to be vying for the spot in the national championship. And so the national champion is going to be a one seed, guaranteed. In the women's division, if, it's going to be women's division, they have opportunity to do that as well. But UCLA and South Carolina are already getting it done. That means USC and Texas have to get it done as well. They play tonight. Both teams play tonight. Texas versus TCU will be at 6:00, and USC versus UConn will participate. will be at 8 o'clock. Once again, if they can win, then I think it'll be, it'll be the years in the, this will be 2025 will go down as the year as the number ones. I'm obviously we're in basket. We're gonna talk about men's, then we're gonna go over the women's. Men's, I'm rooting for Duke. All my other teams got eliminated. I mean, I had SIU Edwardsville going over and beating Houston, but they got demolished. So we're gonna, but right now, I want to take a time and see how all teams got where they, got to the Final Four. Starting with Auburn. Auburn, they in the first round they went against the Alabama State, in which they won 83-63. Then they went to the round of 32 when they played a Creighton team. They beat them 82-70. Then they went on to the Sweet 16 and played Michigan. They beat them 70-65, in which they played against Michigan State in the Elite Eight, where they won 64. When they beat them 70-64. Then now we're gonna go over to Duke. My favorites, Duke in the round of 64. They played against Mount St. Mary's. They beat them 93. They beat them 93-49. Wow. They was not playing this tournament. Then they went on to the round of 32 and beat Baylor 89-66. Beat Arizona in the Sweet 16 100-90. No. Yes, beat Arizona in the Sweet 16. No, they didn't. They beat Arizona. They beat Arizona 100-93. Then they beat Bama in the Sweet 16, 85-65, and they beat. Yeah. So no, they play Arizona in the Sweet 16, 100-63. They beat Bama 85-65. So they basically played 4 games. And out of those 4 games, they only won one by single digits. The other 4, so 3 of the 4 games they won by double digits. This team is for real, And so you're talking about a team that's stacked, but we're gonna go more into that after I finish the other 2 teams. Florida. Let's see how they got to the Final Four. They beat Norfolk State 95. They beat Norfolk State in games. Then they went ahead to beat UConn. After that, they beat Maryland, and after that was Texas Tech. They're going to be a good team as well. Let's see. Then Houston, to round it up, Houston beat SIU, SIU was my upset. Then they beat Gonzaga, then Purdue, then Tennessee to get there. So it's going to be some games. Specifically, let's see who goes against who. Now you're going to have Auburn against Florida, Duke versus Houston. It's going to be crazy. With Auburn and Florida, you have the battle of the seniors, Johnny Broome and Walter Clayton Jr. Broome, he's amazing. Like, I was watching him, I was watching some highlights from the Auburn-Michigan State game, and I was just seeing them like, Florida, they're going to need their big man going to have a game for them. Because Broome is back to the basket, stop me. He's gonna play. Then he's gonna and he could pass him out and he could pass out the post. He's a nasty post worker. Spin move is ridiculous. Obviously in Florida they have Walter Clayton Jr. leading that trap, so they're gonna go crazy. Houston, surprised me. They're like the lesser of the 4 teams there. But not that much. They always. They've been good recently, especially going back to the Marcus Sasser days. Houston has been one of those teams, they're tough and they're going to get after it. With Duke, it's really not even the casual fans know how crazy Duke is, but Duke is going to go crazy. They have 3 almost guaranteed first round pick. and they're playing and they're freshmen. With Con Knippel, their center, and Cooper Flack. You know, they're just going crazy. Then they also have a veteran guard in Tyrese Proctor who's leading that league. Who was a highly talented recruit coming out of high school. So Duke is gonna go crazy. For the women's, it's my favorite team to win it all is still there, which is South Carolina. Anybody knows me knows I'm a Don Staley fan. Um, so which leads me to say next week I will be doing this coaching. I will be doing another coaching highlight, and it's gonna be on her. So we're gonna talk about her player production. Specifically like what players have done since they got to the league from her. So we're gonna talk about that. But first thing first, let's see. She her team got to the Final Four by beating Tennessee State 108 to 48. Then they beat Indiana 64 to 53. And they beat Maryland 71 to 67. And they just had a tough game against Duke when they beat them 54 to 50. Now they're gonna wait. Now they'll wait for the winner of the Texas TCU game, which takes place later on tonight. On the other side, they're gonna be UCLA. They played against Southern and beat them 84 to 46. Then they went against the Richmond and played and beat them 84 to 67. Then they beat Ole Miss 76 to 62. Then it had a 70. Then they beat LSU 72 to 65, which LSU is my other team that I love the winning because I'm a Nissa Monroe and Fly J. Johnson fan. Nissa Monroe, if I haven't told y'all, she's a Chicago native, played for Simeon. Then she went ahead and played for DePaul for 2 years before transferring and playing to LSU, which this is her second year with LSU. So that they're going to be going against the winners of the USC UConn game. If USC can win this game, and it's a big if because I perceive that UConn be the favorite because they have Gene as the coach, and then they have Paige Buckers as their player, and they're going against in USC. They just lost Juju due to an ACL tear. Who knows when she's going to be back? They might not have her back until March to the next year tournament, to next year March Madness, and that's if she plays at all. So if USC could, ride the high hand of Kiki, then they're gonna win. Then they're gonna, only establish the rivalry between them and UCLA even further. If USC and Texas they get business done, they could join them in as the Final Four being nothing but all one seed. We gonna take a break from basketball for a minute, and let's go to football. So with the NFL, with the draft looming at the end of next month, well, let's talk about the Bears. So in the recent, it's been top confirmed like their picks, like who's gonna be who's what, like their top 30 picks. So a list came out, and some of the list is Will Campbell. They have Isaiah Bond on there, and one name is Genty. They have Ashton Genty is there. He's the pick. I would love to have him be the pick, first round pick. Just to have him pair up with Caleb. I still think the Bears is a few years out from winning, so it's like get your players that you think you could build around. Ashton Genty, I definitely think he's probably gonna be the best running back out this bunch. He's he has a persona, and to live in a city, biggest city like Chicago, who's for 8 years in a row voted the best biggest city in Illinois. Biggest city in the U.S. So which speaks wonders, shows you that we're different. This is a big city. Obviously, in Chicago, you're coming to a city that loves sports. We are sports fanatics. We stand behind our teams no matter what. So and you need a big personality for that. So, which is something that William has himself. He's one of those people that I noticed he has a big persona. So you have to have like one of those to survive in Chicago. We can be very critical, but we always have your back. So I would love to see him do that. I love, like I said in the past, I love the position that we are at. We have for the most part, we have our starting five as our in our lineup for alignment with Braxton Jones, Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, Joe Tooney, and Darnell Wright. I'm okay with that being our lineman. I'm okay with us, having players coming off the bench. I'm okay with Doug Kramer Jr. being a bench player. I'm okay with the guard from last year that we got from Yale. I'm okay with us getting, I don't mind us going for Josh Connerly from Oregon in the second round. This year is going to be a deep class for the linemen. You're gonna have people from like all over. Like Seth McLaughlin from Ohio State, Donovan Jackson's as well. Mambo from Missouri. Will Campbell, Calvin Banks Jr. from Texas. You're gonna have those guys. I definitely think we need another edge rusher. I don't know if Dio Obingbo is gonna be the guy. I'm not too for sure on that. I know we gave him a contract with decent amount of money, but he's not a proven pass rusher. He's not like Montez Sweat. He has the opportunity and to prove me wrong, and I hope he does. I do see him as like getting a rotational piece, with Austin Booker getting some reps in. Last year Javon Dexter had spent some time as an end versus being a tackle. Um, I'm interested to see how that's gonna work. Especially with a Dennis Allen. Grady Jarrett's gonna see how him and Javon Dexter is, because going into it right now, one would think that those who are there, they're starting. Inside rush, there are starting inside linemen. Grady Jarrett and Javon Dexter. Then when Andrew Billings and Zach Pickens are being the two rotational pieces off the bench. Um, that too. So I'm interested in seeing that. The Bears, with their linebackers, we obviously, I know they're looking at some linebackers because TJ Edwards coming into a contract year. We have Tremaine Edmonds, him and TJ Edwards are obviously going to be our two linebackers. Hopefully, I want to see Noah Sewell get some more minutes. I'm a big fan of his, especially from his time at Oregon. I want to see him get some tickets there as well. You know, um, but like I said, so Ashton Genty is be my pick, and I would love to see him. He's a guy that obviously he almost broke Barry Sanders. A lot of people give him flack because he was in the Mountain West or whatever. But this is a guy that I would love to see do well. We're gonna go to some baseball now. Transition into baseball. First thing first, I want to talk about the White Sox. Currently, right now, they are 1-2. They won their first game, then dropped their second two games. So this season, they're hoping not to lose as many games as they did last season, which was laughable at best. They take on the Minnesota. They take on the Minnesota Twins today, who's 0-3. Let's see who's going to be on the mound. Yeah, they definitely take on the Twins today. So we're gonna see how that's gonna go. Chicago Cubs, we take on the Athletics today. We're currently 2-4. Winning the series against the Diamondbacks. So I'm interested in seeing how that's gonna take place as well. But Houston Astros, they're gonna be playing for anybody wondering why I'm mentioning Houston Astros. They're gonna be like that one team that is gonna be like my third team that I like watching playing because I'm a fan of one of their picks. Well, because Cam Smith plays there, and I'm a fan of Cam Smith. Still sucks. I still hate the Cubs. Traded him. I'm probably never gonna stop mentioning this. I do think we lost that trade, the Cal Tucker trade. I still think it favors them. We traded one of our best third baseman prospect for a right fielder. And already this guy is already in the league. He's already on a 40-man roster. He's already an MLB player, and the guy just got drafted not even a year ago. So there's gonna be that. Chicago Sky on the other. We're gonna go to some. Well, I want to talk about some hockey. Chicago Blackhawks. So they recently just signed two guys out of their two of their draft picks. I know Oliver Moore and his teammate Sam Rensel. So they are they're and Oliver Moore he was one of those. He was also a first round pick in the famed Connor Bedard draft. He's one of those speedy guys. So I know Oliver Moore, he recently made his debut and he has yet to score anything. So we're gonna see how they're gonna play. So hopefully they're gonna be doing some good things. So I'm excited for that. Hopefully I get to go. I'm planning on going to a Blackhawks game real soon, so I'm gonna look into that. Another thing is to talk about the Sky. Chicago Sky. They traded their third pick to the Washington Mystics for Ariel Atkins. Ariel Atkins is a 3-and-D type of person. She could shoot, one of the better perimeter defenders, so that's gonna help them as well. Courtney Vandersloot, so they have her back. She's one of the best playmakers. In WNBA history, probably the best playmaker in WNBA history. Truth be told, for right now, it's looking like her Ariel Atkins are going to be the two starters. We already know Angel Reese and Camila Cardozo, they're going to start as well. So now we're just going to see who's going to play the three. I know Angel Reese get a lot of flack for not being best player, and I'm gonna be the first. I'm gonna come up here and admit something that I thought I would usually never admit, that she's not Caitlin Clark. That she's not better than Caitlin Clark. I have to admit that she's not. It sucks, but at the same time, I am gonna say this, that she does impact games in ways that nobody else has. The setup, but she is very impactful. But to those who hate on her and just say, "Oh, she's trash," without watching the game, is just it's not understandable. I'm not understanding it. I don't get it, because like, you have this player who gives it her all, and not even just a hustler. She's never gonna be the number one scorer on the team. No, that's not her game. No one's, not one Angel Reese fan gonna sit up here and tell you, "Oh, she's the best scorer in the league. She's a great offensive player." She's serviceable. But one thing I can say is she's consistent. I did a little researching, on her behalf, and I noticed that since high school, she's averaged a double double for the season, like in everything she does. High school she averaged a double double. College, her career average is a double double. In WNBA she averaged a double double as well. Even in the All Star game, she had a double double against the team that won gold. So this is a lady that can play. So for us to call her trash, it's like it's unbelievable. She's shown that she can be a key piece on a winning team. She was obviously, hands down the leader on the LSU team that won that national championship a couple years ago. She was definitely one of those. She's obviously was a leader for the Sky last season. She's a person that that doesn't throw her teammates under the bus. She plays hard. She makes wild. She makes she makes some crazy layups, poor shot poor shot attempts. And shot making decisions that I'm not a fan of. But at the same time, it's like she gets on rebound. And which I kind of don't understand. Like, you know how it's a hate. We hate her because she grabs her own rebound. Like that's a negative. Like, you don't like a player because she gets her own rebound. Like, I tell you, she averaging 13 rebounds a game. Five of those are her. Five of those are her, out of those 13, five of those are her own rebounds. Like, if you take a step back and let's look at it, like, who's stopping her from getting it? Like, that sound like a other team problem. Like, if you don't like the fact that somebody getting their own rebounds, you need to box them out. Well, when they throw up a shot attempt, even as bad as hers is, stop her from getting the rebound. You know, so that means it's not like she's airballing and just getting the rebound because that's the travel. So it's like it's crazy, to think that. Um, but some other news, but like I said, and I just had to get that off my chest. Because I've been thinking about it for some time. It's like, and like I said, I'm a big Angel Reese fan, but I love the way and I'm not a fan because she's cute, and I'm not a fan because she's like she one of those type of person that she's gonna give us 18 and all that. I'm a fan because she rebounds the game. She's affected the game. She's loud. She's like I said, she's in your face with it. She plays like the way she plays the way I play. I would love to play. Or so to say. She's in your face. She's gonna talk with you. She's aggressive, and that's what That's what you want out of a person. You want somebody that's passionate about the game. That love this. Like I'm a big fan of passion. I don't when I watch the game. I wanted to see the people crying. Those, even though it's messed up as it sounds, like I want to see that. I want to see your emotions. And she's the type of person she's gonna leave her emotions on the court every time she plays. She wears it proud. Like that's how she plays. She's not Mr. Cool, calm, collected. No, she's emotional. She wants to play. She wants to win. She's competitive. Like that's the way it should be. I know a lot of us are not used to that. And women, like we don't want to see them very competitive, and I don't know why. But she goes at it when she's on the court. She's giving her all. She's that person. And then on top of that, Chicago, like she held her own against certain people. No, she's never gonna give you 25 a night, consistently, but she can give it to you every once in a while. She's never gonna be your number one scoring option, but she can be. No, I'm never gonna say she can be, but she could be at least number three. I wouldn't mind her being the number three option on the team. Number one and two, you can always because number one option you want them at least scoring over 25. Number two option you want them in the 18 to 22 type of range, and your number three you okay with them giving like 13 to 15 ish points a game. And Angel Reese, she could get you 13 to 15 easily a night. Now that's I believe in her range. But the thing is, and the thing that separates her and the average person is she's gonna get you 10 plus rebounds a night. No one else doesn't it. No one else doing it because no one else does it because like let's be honest, she set a record for most consecutive double doubles in the first half of the season. Before the All-Star game, she had that record, and that record was held by Chicago. It was held by Illinois native Candace Parker. Who held that record between seasons. Like she had that. Like that was a record that she started in one season and she finished it in another season. Angel Reese did that in one season. So that's and like I think Candace Parker record was like 9. Angel Reese blew that one out the park. She finished it averaging a double double. Like that is a rarity. Eh, even Aja Wilson. She had more rebounds per game than Aja Wilson, who's another amazing player. If Aja Wilson, let's be honest, she's the greatest WNBA player right now. Like she's the best in the league. Like even though Caitlin Clark is the face of the league, but Aja Wilson is the best. It's like LeBron's the face of the league, but you probably Jokic or SGA is the best right now. Probably Jokic is the best. Let's be honest. No one's doing what Jokic is doing. So, and I hate to say that Jokic is the best, but I'm an SGA fan. But Jokic is probably the best in the league. And that's not saying has the best career. Obviously, we know who has the best career is LeBron. But we talking about like pound for pound, like right now, when they lace him up, who is the greatest player right now? in the league, and it's Jokic. Like in the WNBA, it's Wilson, Aja Wilson. Like ain't a female in that league right now that's messing with her. Caitlin Clark is up there. She's obviously she doing her thing as well. Shouts out to her. She's the face. She's the WNBA as has done so much growth with her around. To the fact like she sells out stadiums. Like her like her and Angel Reese, like their rivalry is so important for the WNBA, and I'm so glad it exists. I'm probably gonna have to get some tickets, but I know they're gonna be an arm and a leg and they already how I know because they just moved because the game is not gonna be at Wintrust. It's gonna be at the United Center. That's how big this. That's how big There's again that we went that you have to go to another center and you have to go to another arena because just to have more seats. That's big. So I'm looking forward to that game. Obviously, I'm looking forward to the sky. And just to end it all, I'm gonna end it up saying like next week we definitely gonna be back. I believe we should next week should be gonna be I'm gonna talk about the March Madness, national championship when I'm gonna talk about both of them. So look forward to that. So next week that primary show is gonna be primarily based on the winners. Their path is gonna be filled with stats, some highlights. So I'm gonna start breaking down some highlights, have that ready to go, for y'all. So I look forward to that. Well, this is my time. My name's KJ, and this is KJ Sports Talk. I will see y'all next week. I will see y'all next Monday. I'll see y'all soon.